Well, guys, thanks for joining us today.
Thank
Great
you
to
for
have
having
you.
us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, Whitney, before we get started, I think it's safe to say people are pretty familiar with your dad. Give us a little bit of background. I know you held a bunch of different jobs at Pilot, but maybe talk a little bit about that experience and how you've ended up settling in your role here with the Haslam Sports Group.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having us today, and congrats to all of the Newsmakers. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, graduated from the University of Georgia, went on to work at Marriott for a couple years to get some experience, and then ended up at Pilot. Worked at Pilot for over 20 years in a variety of roles, but my last role was Chief Experience Officer. We were living in Nashville at the time, so my husband had a small production company, and my parents bought the team in 12, and he started coming up here, and I was going to Knoxville. And with a 4, 3, and a 2-year-old, I'm like, we got to pick a city, one of these family businesses. So we ended up moving here. We have 3 boys. They're now 14, 12, and 11. We have settled into Cleveland, been here 7 years, and really enjoying it, and now both working for the team.
Okay, so for both of you, I work for Crain Communications, which is a 109-year-old family business. And, we understand as much as anyone the dynamics of a family business, which mostly that it's super easy. But that was a joke, everybody. Give us a little bit of perspective on what it's like working in the family business, first at Pilot and now do you go by HSG or is it Haslam Sports Group? Either way. Okay.
Oh. Well, we're starting off with the...
This is just a warm-up
question. Starting off with the easy questions. Yeah. Family business is very unique. We've obviously had, a lot of great things, and it's been a great experience. And then it's had a lot of challenges and a lot of hard things that we've had to work through as well. It's been awesome to be able to work alongside, my grandfather who started Pilot Flying J, my dad, and then also my mom, and to get to learn from them what to do and what not to do at times. But I think when it comes to the sports business, there's a couple of things that stick out for me. One, every decision you make plays out in the media, and whether it's a good decision or a bad decision. And so being able to have each other to really rely on and trust, and there's obviously a certain bond with family members and bounce things off of and think through those things is great. And then the sports business is really emotional, the highs and lows of winning, obviously. And so to be able to, lean on each other during those times is really important.
The benefits of being in a real sports town, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Jimmy, how about for you?
I would say the same. When I came to work for our family business Pilot, we had 80 gas stations, and my dad was the only one with a college degree. And so when Whitney came to work, it was a much bigger, more complicated business. And for me, it was easy. My dad said, you do these 3 things, and I'm going to do these 5. When Whit came to work, it was much more challenging to kind of, okay, what makes sense? But she did a great job of finding a great niche and customer service, experience, marketing, et cetera. And I think Whitney's like the sports business is, I think Nick can say the same, is it's different because we have, at the Browns, we have 300 employees. We probably have 200 at the Bucks and, I don't know, Mary, 125 at the Crew. And so they're much smaller organizations. And we literally, Dee and I had both run businesses, but never worked together. And we didn't talk about business when we got home because we both worked hard. Well, now our offices are side by side. Whitney's is here and JW's is here. So we get to spend a lot of time together. And do we get into it some? Yeah, we do. But I suspect if you and I work together, we get into it some. But it does give you great time to spend with each other.
That's great. And you mentioned your grandfather, you mentioned your father. Jimmy, talk a little bit about just some of those lessons that stuck with you from working with your dad.
My father was a great leader, not a great manager or boss. He was like, he would never take the time to teach you to fish, but he was a hell of a fisherman, So you had to just learn by watching, okay, because he's not going to take the time to do it.
The same still.
Which I'm continually reminded of.
We're going to have some fun talking about this later. Yeah.
So I would say, first of all, he was very good financially, and I suspect you all were too, because both of us grew up in businesses that to stay in business 109 years or 65 years, you had to continually change and evolve. So he taught me early on, make sure you know how much cash you have, what your sales are, what your margins are, what your expenses are every day. So he's really good there. He worked extremely hard, okay? he was unfailingly optimistic. I heard somebody describe it as living on the sunny side of the mountain. That was, and still is, right? Whit still is unfailingly optimistic, be humble, and give back to communities. And he harped that and still lives that way today in terms of how he conducts his life.
Your turn.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say a lot of those things have really trickled down through generations from, my grandfather starting the business. I'd say the other thing is just the importance of people and how you treat people, everyone you come across. And, we had a truck stop business with over 1,000 stores. And so just every single person that worked for you and that, did the hard job of working in the stores. And then, we talk a lot about just the importance of leadership and making sure we have the right people in the right places. And so we just people and paying attention to and making sure you have all the right people in the right places.
Yeah, that's great. Jimmy, share a little background regarding really why sports has always been such an integral part of, your family and how you look at your role, particularly with the Browns.
Sports was everything in our life. We really, I don't know how you all go. We were sports, family, faith, and business and politics. And that's what we talked about all the time. And that's
not in that order?
It varied by day. But that's still what we talk about all the time. And it gave us a certain amount of commonality there to deal with. But my dad had played football at the University of Tennessee, and we lived 5 miles from the campus, and I was going to practice when I was 6 or 7 years old. And we always said, if we ever had the financial resources, we'd like to buy a team. And we started out with a AA baseball team in Knoxville in the late 90s. And then I think most of us in this room, there's a lot more luck than skill involved in life. And we were in a very capital intensive business. And so we were always entertaining the banks, always. They were always coming to Knoxville. We always needed more capital to grow the business. And we're meeting with Morgan Stanley one night, and there was a younger banker at the end of the table who didn't say much. We're walking out, I introduced myself, and I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm in the pro sports business." And I said, "Well, anything ever comes up, call me." We always did. And that was back when you had business cards. That was 03, and I gave him a business card. And in 07, he calls, and he said, "Are you familiar with the Pittsburgh Steelers situation?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, some of the brothers are involved in gaming, and they need to sell, and they're looking for 10% partners." And I said, "Hey, I appreciate it, but we're really not minority guys." And so we respectfully declined. And he called me back and he said, "You ever go to Pittsburgh?" I said, "We're just over at a truck stop up there. I'm headed up that way next week." He said, "Why don't you have lunch with Art and Dan Rooney?" And listen, most of us would like to have lunch with somebody as quote well known as the Rooneys. And I went up there, and I don't know if they staged it or not, but they're on the second floor. They share it with the University of Pittsburgh. I got off, elevator opens up, 4 Super Bowl trophies. You go, "Man, that's pretty cool." So I had lunch with him. I came back and told my dad and brother about it. And I said, they're very well known. Back then, the NFL was not a real good business like it is today financially. And my dad said, "You're not going to like that. You're not a minority guy." And I said, "Well, they want us to come to New York. Why don't you come with us?" We went with them. He ended up loving it. When are we going to do this? And I said, "Well, are we writing a check or am I writing a check?" So anyway, we got involved with the Steelers, and we're fortunate enough that the Rooneys recommended us to the NFL. And the NFL was bent over backwards to help us. When the lawyers wanted to sell, they didn't want to run a process, and the NFL helped us negotiate the deal. We feel very fortunate to be involved here in Cleveland, part of the NFL, and to have the Browns. And as Dee says, we view it as an asset of the community that we're the stewards of for an indefinite amount of time.
Whitney, you worked a long time in a complicated business. Would have been easy to just hang out with your boys and do all the sports and do all the things. And you decided to continue on and join your family in the sports business. What was that decision like, and what made you roll right into it?
So I mentioned I went to work for Marriott, and then I did a brief stint in politics. And then as I was kind of deciding what was next, I was thinking I was going to go to business school. And my dad was like, "Well, just come back and work at Pilot while you're figuring out if you're going to go to business school or not, or where you're going to go, take the test, et cetera."
Dad.
Yeah. And, 20 years later at Pilot, I had never left. And
That's a short stint over there.
And in a lot of ways, it was like getting an MBA, and because I got to work in, a lot of different areas of the business. But I mean, like we talked about, hard work has always been instilled in us. I love to work. I love to be around people. And so once I was in it, I was in it.
No brainer. I got it. So, Jimmy, it's funny. You just, mentioned how the family is a steward of the Cleveland Browns, or how Dee refers to it that way. Share your thoughts about your perspective on that responsibility, and maybe talk a little bit about folks you brought into the organization in the leadership role.
Yeah, I will say this in pro sports, and I think you run a large family business. I think the owners get too much of the credit and recognition, and people seated at that table are the ones doing all the work. And whether it's on the sports side or the business side, that's true. So first of all, we have a great team on both the business and the sports side at HSG, and that helps us dramatically. Being a sports owner, particularly NFL, it's way more significant than it should be, I'll be honest. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is a relatively small town. My dad was a very influential guy. My brother was governor. We could go out to dinner and nobody said anything to you, but here in Cleveland it's different. So we take that responsibility seriously, and I think our biggest disappointment is how poorly we performed on the field, and that's the one thing we want. Yes, we want it for ourselves and our organization, but we want it for our fans too, because the fans here, really in all three sports, baseball, basketball, and football, are phenomenal. This is a great sports town, really is.
Like Detroit.
Yeah, like Detroit. These upper Midwest cities, and I don't mean this unkindly, because there's not a lot else going on. We grew up in the South where there's all kinds of activities.
And it's cold.
It's cold, the weather's bad. Sports are a big deal, and that's what makes it so great to own sports teams in the upper Midwest.
All right, let's get down to the meat. So Whitney, there's an incredible vision for building an enclosed stadium in Brook Park. Talk to us about how and why this is such a transformative project.
We are so excited about what this could mean for Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. Having a dome stadium and the possibility of having over 70 events a year is so exciting. And we believe these are additive because it's, things that we might not be able to get, like a Taylor Swift concert, NCAA Final Four, college football playoffs, things like that. So being able to host those types of events in a dome stadium, I think solving issues that, we currently have. So the experience of getting in and out of the stadium will be much easier where it's situated along multiple interstates and highways, and then, much better parking experience with 14,000 parking spots. We're also partnering with a company out of Dallas called Lincoln, big, national retail partner, and they're helping us develop all around the stadium. So we'll have apartments, hotel, and then what we call experiential retail, which would be, not necessarily a Topgolf, but, sports kind of entertainment type venues. So we just think that it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. There's a lot of debate about the location, but actually it's an awesome location and really prime real estate that's hard to pass up because of its proximity to downtown, its proximity to the airport and multiple interstates. So we're really excited about what could be.
Jimmy, I know it's been written about a lot, but just for me, talk about why renovating the current stadium isn't an option.
Whitney did a great job of laying out all the pros for Brook Park, and I really don't have anything to add because I think she laid it out really well. I think we have said all along that we would look at both options. The city and the county are due to come back to us with the funding sources and how that might work, and so we will wait till we get those back. Our bias, and we say this publicly.
Sorry, is there a timeline for that? Well,
yeah, that'll be within the next week or two.
Okay.
That we'll get those numbers back.
A
And
very timely conversation.
yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly right. And I think the state funding has to be done by June 30th. So I think a decision will be made in the next 3 to 4 months. This is not something that's going to drag out over a long period of time, or at least we certainly hope it won't. So I think the challenges with renovation are, one, most people in here business, I'm not sure the ROI is as good. 2 and 3, the ingress, egress, and the lack of parking are just extremely challenging. And a stadium on the lake sounds great, but that means half your ingress and egress is cut off. And the other thing about the renovation, it's probably solves for a 15 to 20 year solution. whereas the Dome Stadium is a 50-year solution or more. Whitney and I were at the Super Bowl with family, what was that, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the Superdome in New Orleans is celebrating its 50th anniversary, and they're hoping a Super Bowl. So we look at this as a long-term solving of the problem, and I think that's how really everybody should look at it. And we really think it's additive to the region. Nick talked to us about supporting the urban core, which is important. And listen, if there was a way to build a new Dome Stadium downtown, we would do it. But there's not 175 acres surrounded by 2 interstates flat with energy that's clean. There's no site that comes close to that. So, yeah.
Whitney, talk a little bit about how the new stadium would align with some of the other goals that you guys have for the Browns, growing the fan base. You know, you mentioned improving facilities, but really what happens to the game day experience?
Well, I alluded to some of these things already, but we're so excited about the design of the stadium and everything that it will offer, and then how many of the problems that it solves from our current stadium. But I'd say a couple things to note. First of all, the roof is what we call a long span roof that's clear, that you can see through. So it'll give a great kind of indoor-outdoor feel. Today, our concourses are very narrow. What we're designing is these huge, grand concourses that'll be super easy to move around and get around the stadium. Obviously, heavily looking into food and beverage experience and how to partner with people locally to optimize that as well. We'll have a variety of ticketing options, both GA, premium, and then standing room only. And then, like I said, the property around, like you'll go in and there's 3.5 acres of just kind of game day experience. So being able to get there early, parking is much easier, over 14,000 parking spots. So all in all, we just feel like the opportunity is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Jimmy, talk a little bit about the finance piece of this.
Yeah.
The financing.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned with Brook Park Stadium, how you want to approach the public contribution. Explain how you're looking at that.
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody to understand the scope and the size of this project. The Dome Stadium itself is $2.4 billion. Real estate development will be between $600 million and $1 billion. So let's just take a middle number. It's a $3.2 billion project, okay, that 65-70% will be financed by private money. And so our family, and on the real estate side, our real estate partners, Whitney mentioned Lincoln, will be putting in $2 billion in Cuyahoga County. The financing sources will be roughly, if we can get it worked out, and I need to say that this is not worked out yet, so let me say that, are roughly $600 million from the state and $600 from local sources. We feel very good about the state sources. There's work to do on the local sources. I think the important thing, because it gets misreported a lot, it's hard for people to understand, there's not 1 cent of existing tax revenues that will be directed toward the Dome. It'll be financed by new revenues generated by the Sports and Entertainment District, by the team, et cetera, that the state and or the county / Brook Park will bond, and that's how we'll finance the stadium.
Got it. Whitney, Crain's Cleveland had a front page story talking about a law that tries to keep the Browns in downtown. Modell law? What's the status with that?
Given that it's an active legal case, we probably shouldn't comment too much, but I hope what you've heard today is our family and the team, we are committed to Greater Cleveland. We're committed to giving back to this community, and we're committed to, putting in over $1 billion and finding an over 50-year solution to being in the Greater Cleveland area.
Yeah. Okay. Now the important stuff. How's the team looking?
It's a little early.
Is it?
We don't play till early September, right? Listen, we had a tough year this year. I need to remind myself and everybody else, the year before last, we were 11-6, went to the playoffs. So we had a terrible year last year. I won't go into that.
I don't think that's how sports fans work.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. I think we've had a good couple of weeks, highlighted by re-signing Miles, and went through a little bit of a bumpy period, but Miles called us last Saturday morning and said, I'd like to look at extending and playing the rest of my career here in Cleveland. And Andrew Berry and his agent did a good job of working that out very quickly. Joe Batonio wants to play 2 more years. He's one of our best players and best people. Jack Conklin, we've signed him up, signed a quarterback yesterday. So slow but steady progress. And, you're excited about every year, and we're excited about this. It's a long way away, and we view it as a marathon, not a sprint, but we're excited.
Great. I know you got your hands full with the stadium projects, but looking forward, basketball, soccer, football, there's investments could be in Formula One, in women's basketball, and women's soccer, pickleball leagues. What can we look forward to from the family group?
I would just say that
We won't tell anybody.
yeah, we love sports and we are constantly evaluating opportunities.
That's a great political answer.
Yeah, and I think we also recognize the evolution, whatever you want to call it, of women's sports, and are excited to participate if the right opportunity presents itself.
It's great. Jimmy and Whitney, thank you both so much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, how about a round of applause for our newsmakers?